Today we are learning basketball with Jake Paynting. He has the YouTube channel Howls and Growls, where you can find his work covering the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are super exciting right now. They're mulling over some rumors to retire the legendary Kevin Garnett's 21 number. They're bringing back the trees on the jerseys, the old school look from the early 2000s, and they've got one of the most exciting teams in the entire NBA, one of the most exciting players with Anthony Edwards, some really interesting development for him, for Julius Randle, Gobert, all reliable down low. It's just a really promising, solid, strong team that is pretty much as loaded as just about anyone, save for maybe a team or two out west. But we're excited to dive in. How you doing today, Jake?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. We finally were able to link up, which is exciting. Which was mainly my fault that it took so long. But
No worries.
yeah, I'm really excited to have a chat today.
Yeah, no doubt. No worries. You're out here in Australia. I'm in Orlando, Florida. Like we're making the time difference work here because
Yes.
at the end of the day we got to talk hoops, and I'm really interested in your perspective of Minnesota specifically, and just kind of the inner team dynamics that maybe the outsiders on the national scene are missing out on. Any players or perspective stories that you have kind of seen highlighted. But before we do all the Minnesota stuff, I thought maybe you could tell us a little about just kind of what got you into basketball, what kind of led you to create this YouTube channel, and beyond that, just kind of what your process looks like for breaking down film or creating videos. Is there anything that kind of goes through that process of just coming up with the idea and then executing it?
Yeah, well, it's a long story. Obviously, I'm across the world. So I spent a little bit of time in Minnesota when I was younger with my mum. We moved there from Australia, then moved back to Australia after a few years, and those few years were kind of, I guess, formative now because I obviously fell in love with the team, and continued to be in love with the team as I grew up. And then, yeah, I guess you went through the standard process that a lot of us go through. I think you're a blog boy first, and then kind of find your niche in this thing. And I think my niche is that I love to break down film. I love to kind of talk about the less media-y side of basketball and more the X's and O's and the deeper stuff, the on-court stuff. And I guess in terms of scouting, I love to know the why of basketball. Like, from the simple stuff, why did someone get a straight line drive to the rim? Why did this defensive possession work out so well? And I guess that led me to just watching film in the way that I watched it, in a way I guess a lot of us kind of people watch it, where you are looking for the intricacies within every certain possession and then trying to explain it to yourself, and then eventually now explain it to other Timberwolves fans on YouTube. So I guess that's kind of how I got here. And the channel's been growing and everything's been going pretty well lately. So I'm excited for another season, and yeah, I'm excited to try and grow a little bit more in terms of being a scout.
Absolutely. Any Timberwolves fans, I'm sure, are familiar with your work with the channel. Great job, just breaking down players games and the X's and O's. I can pull up kind of what some of it looks like. What's your process with like the thumbnails and just the little YouTube stuff that not maybe everyone doesn't think about? Like, is there anything that you like or don't like about that creative process of just trying to like come up with a nice looking thumbnail for a screen or a video?
Yeah, it's something that I just guess I didn't know anything about. You go into trying to be a YouTuber, and I just wanted to make videos that I thought were cool. And then as I'm reading more and exploring more about what makes a successful YouTube channel, obviously thumbnails and titles and all those things are such a huge part of it. So I kind of just self-taught it. I just figured out what works best for me, what I can actually do. I'm obviously not super proficient in Photoshop or anything like that, so I kind of just went through on what I can do myself. And as you can see, it's kind of evolved over time a little bit, just in terms of what I can do, what I can't do with my own skills, my own tech skills, I guess. And I think I've gotten a little bit better. It's still definitely not my strong suit, but I guess it's a weird thing that it's not something I ever thought of when I went into trying to break down basketball plays is how do I make thumbnails? How do I make people click on the video?
Right.
But yeah, I think it's something I'm learning slowly as we go along.
Right. And might be a little choppy here through my internet connection, but it's really cool. Just some of the video that you're even able to get. Like where do you even find it? I don't know if you would call this like B film or something. Like it's clearly not like the main like view of the game. I mean, just off the beginning, like where do you even find like different camera views like that to be able to edit these videos?
Well, I've got to give a shout out, and I'm not sure. I mean, hopefully they're probably not listening to this, but I've got to give a shout out to the Timberwolves YouTube, the Timberwolves media side of things, because they do a lot of that B film. I think they call it like the Phantom Cam or the things like that, where I do have to scroll through some of that, and I spoke to them a little bit because I do know people in the organization, and they're okay with me taking it as long as I'm not using it in full length copyright sense. So I just try and splice together a few little things just for intros in videos. Obviously when it comes to the meat of a video, I'm using game film and I'm stopping it, starting it, breaking it down, putting diagrams and stuff on the page. So none of that is kind of copyrighted, but it is something that I do need to troll through a little bit because you want to have a little bit more of a professional feel. And obviously I'm not there at the games with my camera taking B-roll, but it's a part of it that it probably almost takes up most of my time making a video, is trying to find some things that actually make sense to put at the start of a video.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I think it adds a lot. It adds a lot of like what's the word? Not just quality, but it just kind of adds a little legitimacy, like you're saying, to the video itself. It just makes it feel like there's a couple different views. I think it really adds to it, whether it's a short form like TikTok video, getting some of that like B-roll stuff, I guess, or Phantom Cam. But yeah, I'm sure the team got to be cool with it. They're the ones putting it out there. But YouTube and NBA can be a little hit or miss when it comes to like what is copyrighted, what is not, what's allowed, what's not. Mostly just not making money. Like if you don't make money off of it, I think you're pretty safe putting up whatever you want to put up. But it is it is a challenge.
The NBA
in
general is not. Yeah, they're not super accessible in terms of giving people a platform to use their film, and use their product, which I think can sometimes be a little bit of a negative for them. Just because I do think that people who put out these things, or those websites that we've seen pop up and then get shut down, that have every possession of certain things all kind of congealed into one place, are very helpful for fans, especially fans who want to dive deeper and who want to know the game a little bit more. And the NBA don't love that, I think, if they're not making money off it directly. So I understand it, but it's also like the access to the league, even, with some of Adam Silver's comments recently about it being a highlight, league, and it's not accessible, especially for people in market. Obviously, you have a lot of issues at times with the blackout rules, with League Pass. That's something that does get on my nerves a bit. And YouTube, I guess, flows into that a little bit because they don't want you to use their product to make money, like you said. But there's some sneaky ways to circumvent that I probably shouldn't disclose. But we keep moving with that.
Maybe on the Patreon pod, you got to get the sneaky extra access for that information from Jake. He's got the good secrets here for the YouTube editing. But that leads me a little bit, unless you wanted to highlight a certain video, I thought we could kind of dive into the Timberwolves here and just kind of the state of the franchise. Like what, just at the very moment, what are the vibes around the team? They've had a few different goes around in the playoffs now. They've had a few different iterations of this team. It seemed like at the kind of the beginning of this kind of iteration of this team, it was built to stop Jokic with Gobert brought in. You had the double bigs with Cat and now double bigs with Randle. It obviously the Tim Connolly connections, building the Nuggets around Jokic and then coming here to Minnesota and building a team to stop Jokic in a sense. And I got to say up front, like the Minnesota's last 2 years, I've probably been the most wrong about. Like something about the Gobert double big pairing, I could not see it. And I just questioned it, that it would work and that it would beat Jokic. And to their credit, I was wrong. To me, like that was the moment for them that like they are clearly legitimate contenders. They have knocked off the king. They've solved the Rubik's cube here of Nikola Jokic, just throwing a lot of length and defense at him, and Ant going off, and it seems to work. So like to my eyes, that was like the most successful point, and then it kind of reverses. They blow it up a little bit. They shift. Maybe it was due to salary, but they ship Cat off to New York. They bring Julius Randle in. I question that spacing a little bit, and yet that works too because Randle is fully unlocked as a playmaker that I'm sure we'll dive into. But where does the team feel like disappointed at all by certain things? Do they feel strong like that? This year is another year of basically championship or bust expectations, and they're as confident as anyone, obviously with Anthony Edwards type of aura behind it.
Yeah, I think they're in a weird spot where I think the fan base is really happy. Like, we both know how bad this team was for so long. And now they have elevated themselves into a level that is fringe contender. Sorry. Fringe contender at the minimum. You'd think that they are a team who they have a lot of talent. They have a good coach. They have a good system. They're obviously going to be a really good defensive team as long as Rudy Gobert is there. Even as he starts to kind of go over the edge of the hill and start to head downhill age-wise, he's such a floor raiser defensively that anchors the whole team. Is that they're always going to be pretty good defensively, and then it's how much more can you build from that. So I think the season before, where they beat the Nuggets, they lost to the Mavs in the Western Conference Finals. They were defense. They couldn't go with them. Once they got to a team who kind of solved that defense in Luka and the Mavs, they didn't have the offense to kind of power through that and to find other ways to win. This season, they weren't as good defensively, but I think with Randle in there, they actually got better offensively. Just a kind of another ball handler, another shot creator, which Cat is obviously, I think, a better player than Randle, but Randle brought different things to the offense that I think worked a little bit better in this team structure. And I think Chris Finch found it easier to use Randle in the ways that he plays. Obviously, Anthony Edwards gets better. Jade McDaniels gets better. Dante DiVincenzo adds another offensive piece off the bench. Naz Reid is still there. So they did get better offensively personnel-wise. But now they're in this weird position where what's the next step? Because they've got to the Western Conference Finals 2 seasons in a row. They've also got destroyed in the Western Conference Finals 2 seasons in a row. So it's a weird position where you want to build a team that can win a lot of regular season games. You want to build a team that can go far in the playoffs. I think we know now that this team's probably a better playoff team than it is a regular season team. But you've got that OKC juggernaut that's standing in your way, and it's hard for me as a fan to reconcile with, do you build a team that tries to beat OKC, or do you build a team that can maximize its strengths the most? Because you might do everything you can to be the team that figures out OKC and then not get there because you didn't get past Denver or you didn't get past, the Clippers or whoever it may be. So this team feel like a contender in the West, but it also feels weird because OKC feels like they're on such a higher tier than Minnesota right now and than everyone in the West right now. So I guess that's kind of how I'm feeling. I think a lot of the fan base are feeling going into this season is we expect them to win a lot of regular season games. We expect to see growth again from Ant. We expect to see growth again from McDaniels. Can guys like Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. and Jalen Clark, can they be regular contributors now? But also when it comes to can they win the championship, that still feels like it's a step or a half step away.
Yeah, and to your point, it feels like they were built to beat a team, which was the Nuggets, and now they were maybe disappointed that wasn't the ultimate goal. Really, it was just kind of the biggest obstacle to that goal. And it's like you solved one problem, but maybe not the rest. And I think maybe that lesson in itself kind of answers your question too, in my opinion, of that you should almost just build your own car and hope it outraces the other one. Because if you're just trying to keep up with the other team. It almost feels like an endless journey where you're trying to like match their moves, and then at some point style of play in the NBA could change, and maybe they're not the biggest obstacle anymore, and you just spent 3 years trying to build a perfect match for them. So you never really know what could happen in the NBA. And I think Julius Randle is a big key I wanted to highlight, where I was really impressed by him all year. I mean, the playoff series, he had a ton of big moments. I feel like he had a little personal edge against like LeBron and the Lakers, like going off against that, having formerly kind of been on the Lakers and then kind of pushed out to make room for LeBron back then. Maybe a little bad blood there. That was fun to watch his defensive intensity that series, which he's just not necessarily known for. But to me, the big thing that you mentioned was Cat's a better player, but he's a better 3-point shooter for sure. However, if you want to like go skill by skill, Randle probably is the better playmaker. He probably is better at, driving into the paint and creating for others. And so my question is, how much do you think Randle's impact helped Anthony Edwards develop this season? Last season? Do you credit, because Anthony Edwards had a career year in 3-point shooting, but a lot of that was actually pull-up 3-point shooting, not just catch and shoots that would come off of Randle's playmaking necessarily. So how much credit do you give to Randle joining the team to Anthony Edwards' huge development as a 3-point shooter last year?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think if there's something that this team will be focusing on going into next season, the Randle and Ant synergy will still definitely be one of them. I don't think they ever really got to a point where you felt like they were one organism working within that offense. It did feel like they were still two islands, and sometimes two islands can work. Like you do need separate pieces within an offense who can both go and do their own thing. And Randle loves to get into the middle of the paint, draw two defenders, kick out to shooters. Like that did open up catch and shoot 3-point shots for Ant, who has become. I mean, he's always been a really good catch and shoot shooter, but he's become deadly with it now. But like you said, it was the pull up improvement that really spiked his 3-point volume, 3-point accuracy. So I still think most of that comes in the synergy with Gobert. Gobert's such a good ball screener that it does open up a lot for Ant, and especially early in the season when teams were still happy to play drop against Edwards, like he got to the point where you just couldn't play drop coverage against him. Like it was Steph Curry levels of, if he comes off a ball screen and that second defender isn't up at the level, it's a bucket every single time. So I don't know if Randle, I think maybe in a weird way, some of the spacing issues kind of almost forced Ant's hand to become a better 3-point shooter, because the lane did get so much more congested when you're replacing Cat with Randle. And teams really, took that leverage to sag off Randle and use another weapon in terms of defending Anthony Edwards. So in a kind of, it's a strange way. It's a strange thing to say, well, because Randle isn't a great shooter, that made Anthony Edwards a better shooter. But I do think that it forced him to shoot more threes. And obviously he'd gone away in the offseason and worked on that 3-point shot. And I think by halfway through the season, it just became such an intrinsic part of his game now that it's kind of his main trait, which is it's not a normal thing to say for a guy who might be the most athletic player in the entire league. That when I think of Anthony Edwards now, I think of a guy who shoots threes, like a guy who is just such a deadly jump shooter that it kind of powers his whole game. And obviously he can still get to the rim, but he didn't finish at the rim very well last season. The spacing all season was really bad. Like they really fought against their own spacing issues for the whole season. And Ant's 3-point shooting kind of carried that. So I think Randle obviously helped this team, but I don't know if he helped it with Anthony Edwards. I think more that he gave them another option for kind of away from Anthony Edwards, so it didn't always have to be Ant, which does get problematic because he's still not a great playmaker, still not a great decision maker. He's grown a lot in those two areas, but it does help to have another kind of heliocentric-y feeling player on the court, because if Ant has that massive usage and is a guy who you're asking to make all of your decisions, especially playmaking or just in terms of collapsing defenses and making kickouts, it does get a little bit stagnant. So I think that Randle more helped him in the way that he took the pressure off him to have to do that so often.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you got a crowded paint. You're going to lean towards jump shots eventually because you don't want to sacrifice your body every time, whether it's driving into the paint for fouls, the contact. And to your point, like Anthony Edwards might be the most explosive player in the NBA, downhill especially and vertically, and yet now he's also one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA. It's like that's the kind of thing you say, like, if Giannis could have a 3-point shot, he'd be unguardable. Like, that's where we're at kind of with Ant. When that 3-point shot is hitting, like, you can't stop the quick first step burst. You can't stop the pull up. And just to highlight it, he shot, we got 38.5% on 7.5 pull up threes per game. That's a high volume of just pull up threes and a super high percentage.
That number dipped off quite a bit in that last month of the season where he kind of, hit a cold stretch. Like, for a lot of the season, that was up at 41, 42%.
Yeah, and that's where his catch and shoot numbers are for the season. And just to put in perspective, last season, he only shot 4.5 pull-up threes on 33%. So he shot almost twice as many threes and hit a solid 5% better. Like, that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah. It's an outlier development, especially when you kind of consider that this was a guy who shot like 29% from three at Georgia. Came into the league as a guy who was really just looked at as that pure athlete, not non-shooter, but streaky shooter. And now it's almost flipped where a lot of possessions you might not see him even enter the 3-point line. He is such a shooter and it's such a weapon. And I think eventually there's going to be a little bit more of an amalgamation of those two talents. Like, it did feel like sometimes this season it strayed too far into I'm going to show everyone that I'm the best shooter in the league territory. But I think as he kind of gets a bit older, we might see a little bit more. And as they get better, not better players, but better spacing around him. Like, I just think in this iteration of the Timberwolves kind of journey, Ant just has never really had great spacing. And Gobert, especially, teams don't defend Gobert. And Ant, to his discredit, isn't great at leveraging that into assists for Gobert. So I think teams are happy. I mean, it is at the point now where Ant just gets trapped and doubled off every ball screen that Gobert sets. So if you're talking about, the most freakish athlete now adding the 3-point shot, the next step is the most freakish athlete with a 3-point shot, adding more of that nous and that playmaking in terms of being able to really be a floor general when he has the ball in his hands. Because that is the way that the NBA is going, is that these high usage scorers aren't just point guards. They are point guards in terms of they're going to have the ball a lot. They need to set up the play. They need to run the offense. And that's the next step for Ant.
Right. I went long on that idea called like a scoring creator type of player, or just an offensive engine is the same type of player where your lead scorer, your lead advantage creator is now responsible for also every decision for your offense 50 times a game or 100 times a game, however many possessions you get on offense. I'll go with 50. But yeah, so that leads me to my next question about Gobert. You hit on it already. To hit on some of the team stats first, the Minnesota was 5th in point differential last season in the regular season still. So they were still, the 5th best team by that number. They were the 6th seed in the West, so maybe got a little unlucky with some seeding, some close games, and obviously all those is such a tough conference. I mean, they were probably separated by like 5 games between all of it. But you're looking at 5th best point differential, 8th on offense, 6th on defense, and 3 of the offensive categories are of 4 factors are top 15, 8th in free throw rate, and all of the defensive 4 factors are top 12, 6th in shooting percentage on the defensive side, 8th in free throw rate on there as well. So that at least highlights the team defense. It's all around elite, led by Gobert, perennial depoy. I am one of Gobert's critics for a couple reasons, but like he's clearly an elite regular season rim protector on the aggregate that is going to hit these four factors for you. So you mentioned it. Other teams aren't really guarding him. Where do you think that problem lies come playoff time? Like, are we still at the point where they have to sub him out in certain matchups for one reason or another, and that's just kind of where we're at with his game, where some matchups he's an elite lockdown defender who's really, really impactful, and some matchups he's just kind of getting run off the floor and not his shot blocking isn't really utilized because maybe you're playing against small ball or something where he has to be dragged out to the 3-point line or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I'm a Gobert critic as well. I think like both of us, it would be more. It's not in a way where we're not hating on Gobert. It's more in a way that when
it's the standards. It's like
exactly.
when people start saying Dwight Howard versus Gobert or Draymond Green versus Gobert, and it's just like, let's pump the brakes a little. I view those guys on another level, but credit to Gobert because he's won all these depoys. And I would have liked Drew Holiday maybe snag one of those in the last decade here. But he's got a lot. He's got as many as anybody, like as many as Marcus Camby, as many as Mutombo and Dwight. I'm pretty sure he's got 4 or 5. So he's doing something right. The voters love him. But as you were saying, it can get a little tricky in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, and I think one thing I will say is that when Gobert came to the Timberwolves, it did open my eyes to he is a player who I think you do need to watch on an every night basis to really get the full picture of him, because I was definitely even further in that direction before he played for my team, because I didn't, you watch him when you watch the Utah Jazz when they're on, you don't kind of follow the Utah Jazz religiously. So he does provide a structure defensively that I haven't seen, I mean, for this team since KG, but obviously it is in that Draymond level kind of way where everything pivots around Gobert. And when he's not on the floor, you can really feel his presence not out there. He's obviously so big. He's really, really smart defensively. The way he moves, the way he shifts across the lane, the way he defends two in pick and roll. I will say I don't think I've ever seen anyone who can defend two players in pick and roll the same way that he does. Like the way he kind of hovers between the roller and the driver. And there's been players on this team for, multiple years that aren't great point of attack defenders. Obviously, Jaden McDaniels is. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was for this team. But Anthony Edwards has always been hit and miss off a ball screen. Mike Conley's small and old. And Gobert really does kind of wrap up those pick and roll, like your pick and roll defense while he's on the floor. It will always be good. So, and that's such a huge part to having a great defense. If you can defend a pick and roll, the baseline's high for your defensive outcome. But I still to this day just think that the issue is offensively. I just think that he can't do, even against small ball. If a team played small ball all game in a playoff series, I wouldn't be that worried about Minnesota's defense. You're not going to get the prime version of Gobert who can sit at the rim and just ward off everyone from coming in there. But he's not bad on the perimeter. He's good in terms of reading coverages, making smart decisions on when to go and when to stay. Like those things, you would prefer to have a smaller player out there. But because he's such a great rebounder, he's such a great lob finisher, like he does provide some value still, especially against a small ball unit. Like he will destroy a team on the offensive glass if they play small all game. Like we saw the Lakers game 5, the last game of the series. Jackson Hayes didn't play a single minute for that game. JJ Redick had kind of, banished him from the rotation by that stage. And I think Gobert had like 28 and 25 or something for the game, like 28 points, 25 boards in a closeout, series win. So the problem is, except for a game like that where he just feasts on the offensive glass and they kind of find him in the flow of the offense, is he just can't do anything against anyone offensively. He can't post up a small guy. He can't catch the ball in traffic. He can't catch the ball kind of in general if it's not, put on a platter for him at the rim. So you really need to have guys who are very well connected with him offensively, know where he wants the ball, can get it to him often. He does get a bit frustrated if he's not involved in the offense, which feels weird when it's a guy who he's very turnover prone for a low usage player. I think he finished like 30% of his layups in the playoffs, and he's 7'3" or something. So like,
right.
and this is the frustration I think that all Timberwolves fans have with him. I don't think anyone really has ever had a problem with him defensively, in any situation, because he was just been such a game changer for this franchise and really made them a defensive minded team. But he is a bad offensive player, and this team isn't good at finding him either, which is only adds to the problem that Ant's not a good lob thrower. Conley's great at throwing lobs to Rudy, but now no one trusts Conley to score 2-point shots. So, if he's coming off a pick and roll, they both sag back to Rudy, and they will allow Mike Conley to shoot a floater.
Wow.
And Jaden McDaniels doesn't find him. Like, no one in the offense can find him where he wants it, which only further exacerbates that he only wants it in one or two areas of the floor. And if you can't get him there, he does feel like a big roving roadblock, is how I've kind of described him in the past, is that he's just in the way a lot. And obviously, when you have Anthony Edwards, who's so explosive going downhill, you have Julius Randle, who wants to get downhill and wants to play bully ball at the rim. Like, he does become a roadblock for those guys. And I think that's why in the playoffs, especially with this team, you will see Chris Finch pick and choose moments that he wants to go with Randle and Naz Reid instead. Because there is moments that I feel like it just gets a little bit too obstructive, and I think Finch gets to the point where he just says, you know what, let's just get some offense on the floor. And I heard a Chris Finch interview a couple of days ago, and he said the biggest thing for him, biggest kind of point of emphasis coming into training camp, is getting better defensively in the non-Rudy minutes. And I think that kind of proves that point, is that when Rudy goes off the floor, they can't play defense. But when he's on the floor, they can never maximize themselves offensively. So that's been the problem for years. And I still think that's the problem, especially in playoff series, because if you don't push the right buttons at the right times, and it has to be really specifically the right times, coaching wise, which is tough to do, then you get these games where you can't score, but you get these games where you can't defend. So that's the Rudy issue. He's kind of a walking contradiction.
That's really a great way to put it. A lot of great stuff to hit on there. He's the definition of a play finisher offensively, where there's just no creation there at all. Like, he'd be perfectly paired with a creator. And like you said, peak Mike Conley, man, that would really be a nice fit, where you have just an ultimate point guard, one of the smartest guys in the game, able to touch pass to a play finisher like that, lobs and dunker spot. But like you said, if he's now at the point where he's not really getting respected by defenses either, it's just really tough. You're basically playing like 4-on-5 out there with Gobert, even though he's also a one-man defense. And it's kind of just like the ultimate trade-off of like you just have to take the bad with the good. And when the defense is that good, and I don't think we are underrating it. Like you said, like, he is their entire team defense in a sense, where his presence is felt when it's not out there. And I'm sure his rim deterring presence is felt when it is out there. So he's able to keep people away from the rim.
It's one of those things that you don't notice kind of until he's not out there. Like, you kind of when it's Randle and Reid, it just all of a sudden becomes this layup line, and neither of those guys are great rim protectors either. Like, I'm sure if you found a rim protector that can back him up, you'd be able to close that gap a little bit between the best and the worst. But I think what they've chose to do is they've chose to kind of have two different identities. Is that when Rudy's off the floor, we know we're not going to get a player. If you got another rim running backup, if you got Bismack Biyombo, who is that
the rookies are now who I'm thinking of as you're mentioning it. Rocco Zakarski, Joan Behringer, or I made a kind of a joke that the draft felt like the draft of the understudies, because a lot of different teams were taking players that played the same position as their best player. But Joan Behringer has some real potential as, at the very least, another rim protector, rim roller in the mold of a Gobert, and Rocco too similarly is a play finisher, rim protector type. So I think, to your point, I think that maybe they targeted some more big men possibilities to kind of maybe round out this rotation, as you're saying, when he's not on the floor, or maybe even another big to pair with him, or pair with Randle in different lineups. Because you're right, like him and Randle and Reed are just not rim protectors. So pairing them together brings the offensive benefit. You get a playmaking 4 with a stretch 5, but you're losing that rim protection, and it probably goes from like no one's coming to the rim to like everyone has the green light the moment he's off the floor. So
yeah, it feels like it's like watching two different games. Like it's you get this slow, sludgy kind of grinded out team, which the Timberwolves often are, and then when Gobert's off the court, you get this high powered offense that can spread the floor, multiple playmakers, multiple play finishers from different levels. So it's I think they are trying to close that gap a little bit. Like you said, I think the Berenjay drafting is a surefire sign that they think what they have is the blueprint going forward. Like I think they know that if Gobert retired today for whatever reason, like they would be a much worse team, because they do need that stability, that kind of access to flow around defensively. And I think Anthony Edwards needs that so that he doesn't have to really, super exert himself all of the time defensively, because he is such a high usage, high energy guy offensively. So what the benefit, I think, if we're kind of, moving into that, is that I think the Berenjay, the Zakasti, is that they, maybe not Zakasti as much, but definitely Berenjay, is that he's like quick and he's bouncy and he wants to run the floor, and he feels a little bit more of a modern kind of rim running big. Like there isn't the 3-point shot there, but if you aren't going to have a 3-point shot, I think you need to be really fast. You need to be able to be switchy defensively, which he is, and he was, overseas last season. So I think they're kind of almost looking at the new age Gobert, and the odds that he ever gets to Gobert level of defensive acclaim is low, super low. But if you're looking at how can we kind of keep building this same identity but do it in a bit more modern way, because Gobert's a bit of a dinosaur type of player, is from a different age where those players were more valued. So that, I think Tim Connolly and his team definitely want to keep the Gobert thing going, but maybe try and get it in a bit more modern way in a year or two.
Yeah, I mean they're hedging their bets in a smart way, where they like you said, they don't have to recreate it exactly, but they have a blueprint of a winning formula in both the regular season and multiple playoff rounds now, where they hopefully could kind of emulate some of that in a more modern version, like you're saying, because Behringer is he is more mobile and agile, it feels like, in a sense. Like he's just a little quicker, like you're saying, and still brings that rim protection and play finishing. So if they can kind of solve the half court point guard creator element of this all, that seems like the next step for the team. And will it be Anthony Edwards, or do you think, that brings me to kind of the rest of the roster, do you think someone else steps up as a creator, or any surprise role players pop up this year? Obviously, Rob Dillingham is probably the name that comes to mind as kind of the next guard on this team. And there's also some great defenders we haven't even mentioned. Jaden McDaniels, Jalen Clark are some really strong perimeter defenders as well, that just kind of build a really nice core around just flanking Anthony Edwards with defense and play finishers and eventually shooting. Like, seems like a pretty nice formula there.
Yeah, I think it is as well. I love the point that you made earlier about having that primary creator, your shot creating kind of point guard who's not a point guard, because that's something I've been really strong on recently, and something that I've actually got a lot of pushback on, because when you think of Ant, you don't think, when you say the word point guard, I think a lot of people say, well, Anthony Edwards isn't a point guard. But when you watch any game, whether it's Ant, whether it's Jason Tatum, whether it's, SGA is not a point guard. Like, these guys have the ball in their hands a lot, so they need to be able to do point guard things. And whether you label them as an initiator, a playmaker, a point guard, like a creator, like that's what they are. And that's in my head, I'm feeling like they're probably going to shift even more towards that this season, that they want Ant to be better at those point guard things because Mike Conley's getting older. Rob Dillingham, like you said, I think is the hope for fans and for the franchise that they kind of squeeze the most out of Rob Dillingham, which is, it's a tough needle to thread because he's really small. He's really exciting, does a lot of cool things. He's obviously has that shot creating gene to him, and has been a really surprisingly good playmaker for this team as well whenever he's got minutes. But I think you even if Rob Dillingham turned out to be really good, I think you're still putting the ball in Anthony Edwards' hands more often than not. So, like, if you can build a team that has, like you said, those wing defenders, those play finishers, shooters around Anthony Edwards, I do think that's the maximum ceiling potential for this team. But that requires Ant to get better at some of the things that he's not as good at right now. To answer your question, I think, yeah, obviously Rob. I think TJ Shannon has really popped in the last kind of 3 months. You know, summer league, his playmaking looked like it went to another level. I know for a fact that they're really trying to develop some of that secondary ball handling, secondary playmaking game with him. They're doing the same with Jaden McDaniels. So I think they are kind of following that mold where they want big players on the floor. They want to be big. They want to be mobile, active. You know, they want to have a lot of shot creation, a lot of guys who can play off the catch. But they also have this Dillingham piece to answer, which is, you know, you drafted this guy with the 8th pick. You gave up a future pick for him. That all points to point guard of the future kind of commitment. So I think and your current point guard is 38 years old, you know, so it's a weird situation they're in where their incumbent point guard is probably in the last season of his career. Their future point guard is 19, 20 years old and barely played last season. And they have to find a middle ground there, which I think is probably going to just be Ant has the ball a lot, and you can play a Dante DiVincenzo or a Terrence Shannon or, you know, Jaden McDaniels, Jalen Clark. Like, those guys can kind of flank him as I guess nominal point guards while Ant has the ball.
Yeah, I mean, you have Ant. Your roster construction is wide open. You can put really any guard next to him and probably find a complementary lineup in some form or fashion. And I could definitely see, like, I do like the idea of getting some playmaking reps for some of the other players just to take advantage of some of Ant's off-ball gravity as well. Like, if he's one of the best shooters in the league, let's have him stretch the floor, whether it's on the ball or off it. But like, you make a great point where it's kind of like they have two quarterbacks, but they have none because they're both in the wrong window at the moment. Like, they're trying to win now, and both guards are kind of at different stages than win now. So it is an interesting dilemma there where you almost want to say you need to trade for a third guard to win now. But you know, that's the NBA is tough. But I definitely would think, like, the stock seems like it's in Rob Dillingham. To, you know, you mentioned all the draft capital. He's a high profile talent. Seems to have some really great chemistry with Anthony Edwards. Anytime they pop up on social media, he's always hyping him up as kind of the guy. So, you know, he has the support of the star. So I think fans are definitely excited for good reason. Like, you're a contender with like a top 10 pick, just kind of sitting there developing. Like, you want to know what you have. So, you know, it might be time to just throw him out there and see what he does in starter minutes or whatever it may be. And if you got to adjust, you adjust. They also signed Bones Highland. But I really want to shout out Joe Ingles because he's the man. He's just a legend.
My countryman.
Hey, you know, is he one of your favorite players for that reason?
Well, yeah, I obviously gravitate towards all of the Australian players in some way or another. I think we've all collectively dropped Ben Simmons a little bit as the years have gone on. But Joe Ingles is just he's, I think, a legend in this country more for his attitude towards the game and what he's kind of made of himself from, you know, an undrafted guy. He played a lot of years in the NBL over here. I remember watching him when I was a kid, kind of, you know, and he was a kid playing NBL, and he was known as one of the biggest talents coming out of Australia at that time. And then it was a meandering path for him, but he got there eventually and made such a home in the NBA. So, I mean, he's super washed now in terms of a player. Like last season, he was washed, but I think they re-signed him this season just purely because he's such a great locker room guy that he's worth having on a minimum contract there for a guy who's not going to play anyway. Like, I think they would prefer to use it on someone who is so great for team chemistry and so great for the locker room that they don't, that they'd rather use that than sign a player who might play 300 minutes for the season, but, and really wants to get that chance to show them, prove themselves. So Joe's a legend, and everything I see media-wise or interaction-wise, he always seems like, just the coolest dude. So I'm happy for him that he's on my team still.
No doubt. I mean, it makes me think of Patty Mills as well, of course, the FIBA Patty, probably my favorite FIBA player, honestly. Like, just seeing Patty Mills go off for threes. I've been, like, begging the Magic to go after Patty Mills probably 10 years running at this point, but one day. And funny enough, Ingles was way too vital to the Magic's bench unit just 2 seasons ago. Like, he was legitimately the point forward for that team, keeping like him and Mo Wagner pick and rolls was the entire bench second unit offense for the Magic 2 years ago on a playoff team.
Yeah, I was super surprised at how much he just didn't look like that. I mean, that can happen when a player is, I don't know, 36 or 37 now. But I think we all thought he was going to be the Kyle Anderson replacement because he does play in that similar way, a better shooting Kyle Anderson, which is and maybe a better shooting, worse defending Kyle Anderson, which is what we all wanted as fans because we were like, look, we've got enough defense on this team. This team really needs shooting. It really needs someone who can make shots off the bench. And, I mean, Joe never really got a chance to get into a rhythm for the season, which I think is so vital for a player who's his age and who's so used to playing every season and being a starter for a long time and then being a prominent bench player. That coming in for one rotation a game where he might play 7 minutes, it didn't really work, and by 2-3 weeks into the season he just was out of the rotation. But that's the kind of player, a person I guess he is, that it never seemed to bother him, which I'm sure it would bother any player, but it never seemed to affect the way he was on the sidelines, the way he was in media, the way he was from what I've heard behind the scenes. Like, he was just crucial to, especially a guy like Jaden McDaniels, who he sat next to every day. They became really great friends. And they're obviously very different players, but there's a lot that Jaden McDaniels could learn from a Joe Ingles. And I think he was very willing to impart his wisdom on the team, whether he was playing minutes or not.
Yeah, and I think that continuity is a great point because Orlando was able to keep the exact bench lineup almost relatively healthy the entire season, where it was Cole Anthony or it was Joe Ingles running pick and rolls. They had Mo Wagner, kind of a second unit mismatch killer, and they just kind of surrounded it with some defense and shooting. And I think those reps, the familiarity of we're going to, like, you're going to get about 10 pick and rolls a game, I'm sure that has something to do with it too. Instead of, like, he's probably not at the athletic point of his career where you can just throw him in any lineup and still get the benefits of the playmaking and the shooting if he's just kind of standing in the corner maybe. So, and it's a little broken up. That's maybe why I would guess, along with age, where maybe it just fit a little better with the floor balance here. And so the last question about this team is between, Naz Reid is brought back on a 5-year deal. Randall's back on a 3-year deal, but they lose Nickeil Alexander-Walker in free agency to the Hawks. I thought he was really big to the bench unit. He was kind of this dynamic do-it-all guard that could defend, run a little offense, create a little bit. With one in and Naz Reid staying, who I also want to highlight as, like, I think one of the most impactful players for the team last year. Who do you think can kind of replace Na? Is there any players we haven't mentioned that you think will have a pretty big role next year, or could be a swing player, an X factor to the entire rest of the season?
Yeah, well, I think Chris Finch confirmed this actually in that same interview a couple of days ago, which I think everyone had kind of been thinking, is that they ran an 8-man rotation last season pretty strictly for the whole season. So I think fans wanted to see that widened a little bit out, maybe to 9 or 10, at least for the regular season, to try and preserve some minutes from Mike Conley. Obviously, now you lose Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I think what they're trying to do is they're going to try and take a little bit from all of those young guys and get them into the rotation to try and replace Natil in a group kind of like by committee, I guess. So Dillingham's going to play this season. I think he kind of replaces the ball handling. Alexander Walker was their backup point guard last season for most of the season, and at least got them into actions, got them into the Anthony Edwards stuff, like we said, where it's kind of at least bring the ball up the floor. Maybe Ant will come off a pin down, or Ant will come off a little, horns out action or whatever. I think that's going to be Dillingham. I think the scoring that Natil produced is going to be taken by Terrence Shannon Jr., who he's going to be in the rotation. I think he'll probably play the most minutes of any of these younger guys. Like Chris Finch loves him, played him in the playoffs multiple games last season, played him in big moments towards the end of the season. So I think he's kind of cemented himself as a player who, is in this rotation. He dominated Summer League to the point where it just kind of felt silly that he was even there. And then you get Jalen Clark for the defense, which obviously Alexander Walker was just such a huge part of this defensive identity in terms of a bench guard who can come in, who can lock down opposing guards, who is willing to take on any matchup and really just plays, I like to say plays for the fans, like those guys who you play, who, you can gravitate towards. They just play so hard every night and they're so selfless. So you have those three traits still on the roster, but they're in three different players now. So that's going to be the problem, I guess, or the solution for Chris Finch is how do you get that to work in three different players when you had it all in one player. So I'm excited to see how that works, but I think that's how they're going to try and approach that.
Yeah, there's definitely talent on the roster to make it work. Just kind of like the Gobert problem, it sounds like it'll come down to some lineup combinations and matchups to see, where they find that floor balance. Because that's ultimately what I think the goal is for any lineup, is just finding two-way floor balance where all the roles complement each other. And it doesn't really matter which player has what roles. It doesn't have to be traditional. Like we kind of said before, there isn't like a traditional Andre Miller out here just running offense as a point guard and not really doing anything else. Even though he was a great defender too. But
yeah, I love Andre Miller.
Yeah, man. He's the man. It was the first like old school point guard that came to mind. But Andre's the man. But now, like we're saying, the guys that can score and create those advantages, we're just going to run every play through them. And if somebody tries to stop them from scoring, now we're going to rely on their decision making, read and react. Do they score? Do they pass? Do they draw the foul? And just let your best players be the best players. And I like that idea of it. So last thing here, the Timberwolves are doing some cool rebrand or old school, bring back the old jerseys rebranded, some classic jersey time. They're bringing back the black trees, the Timberwolves. And there's some rumors of the Kevin Garnett's jersey possibly being retired this year. So we got great times, big nostalgia vibes in Minnesota this season between one of the greatest jerseys in NBA history, flat out. Definitely one of the coolest, especially with KG rocking it back in the early 2000s. You got Anthony Edwards here wearing it with the old school logo, the trees on kind of the collar and the arms. What do these jerseys mean to Minnesota fans? And can you kind of hit on a little bit of KG's legacy, like what he means to the Timberwolves? Obviously, one of the greatest defenders of all time.
Yeah, I mean, these trees are crowd favorites. Like you will not see a single Timberwolves fan that doesn't want the trees as their 24/7 every night jerseys. Like this is such a nostalgic part of the franchise that there was such a long time between being a good team and being a good team. Like there was that massive gap, and for a long time, all of us, all that we had was the KG era. And this is a throwback to that KG era, which obviously holds a special place for a lot of fans. And it feels cool to see it like on Anthony Edwards, especially where it's like, well, we get to blend these two things of when a lot of us were kids or younger people, and now where we are now with a team that probably has had more success than even the KG era did. Like 2 Western Conference Finals. They'd only been to 1 in the franchise history before that. So it feels cool. I mean, I think Anthony Edwards is probably pretty easily at the moment, the second best player in franchise history. So to have that these have these pictures during the season, I guess, of of both of these guys rocking the black trees is cool. The court that you could see there as well is really cool as well. And I mean, that buries the lead is that Kevin Garnett getting his jersey retired is obviously long overdue. He had beef with Glenn Taylor. He said he will never come to a jersey retirement while Glenn Taylor's still in management. I don't think Glenn Taylor himself wanted to retire KG's jersey because they just didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. And now Glenn Taylor's gone and the new owners are in, and it's definitely true that they're working on it. Like, I don't know how far along that path they are, but the new owners and KG have a great relationship. I know they've spoken to him about ambassadorial roles in the past, and they definitely want to retire his jersey. And there's, apart from Malik Sealy, who tragically passed away a long time ago, that's the only jersey up in the rafters right now for the Wolves. So, and I don't think another one should be up there until KG kind of gets up there himself. So, I mean, that is going to be one of the great nights of the season if they manage to pull that off. It will just be a packed house. It'll be an outpouring, I think, of emotion because KG means so much to this franchise, and to all fans. As you know, I got a KG picture right there. Like, it's for all Timberwolves fans, especially my age, I think, who kind of grew up on the Kevin Garnett era and became fans in my case because of Kevin Garnett. Like, it'll be cool to see him back and to not feel estranged from the team like he has over the last few years.
No doubt. KG is just maybe the GOAT defender. Like, he was one of my brother's favorite players growing up, had the jersey. One of my favorite players just as a defender, just respecting the defense of it all. Kind of the whole jersey beef feels a little bit similar to the Shaq situation in Orlando, where Orlando only had number 6 retired for the fans. So this entire time they've had no players retired, just the number 6 for the 6th man for the fans. But finally, long overdue, Shaq gets his jersey retired after some beef between him and the team that just went too long. Like, at the end of the day, these are like some of the greatest basketball players of all time. There's only so many of them when you really do the math. It's only like, I don't know, a couple hundred or a couple thousand that even make the league. So when you have somebody that actually like represents your whole city for years, let alone like what KG did, I mean, you just got to honor him in the best way possible. So I'm glad he's getting his due. I mean, I'm definitely on the side where like KG has an argument with just about anybody. Like, I think he was there with, like, there was a KG or Duncan as the best 4 debate, and Duncan was doing all the winning, but that didn't stop KG from being in that debate. And now, obviously, he got the chip with the Celtics finally to kind of like just kind of legitimize some stuff, because you don't want to see a guy of that caliber not win a ring at some point. So it's cool he got that as a part of the Big Three. Boston, that was a super incredible team as well. But he'll always be a Timberwolf for life. So it's cool to, like, he's the greatest Minnesota Timberwolf of all time. Like, he's their guy. There's a million Celtics. That's your guy right there. So it's cool that hopefully it happens this season and they figure it all out. But just had to give KG a shout. He's too cool of a player. I'm excited to hopefully see the team honor him.
Yeah, same. It'll be long overdue, and it'll definitely be a good night. In the Wolves space.
No doubt. Well, with the court, throwback court, the trees back, KG in the building, the vibes are looking good in Minnesota. It's an exciting time. I can't wait to see kind of how the season plays out, and I definitely could see just this new iteration of a couple different players around Ant and Randle really panning out. And I'm excited to see which ones kind of take the leap, because I do think there's opportunity here for kind of one more guy to jump out as like a clear kind of core part of this starting unit going forward. So it'll be super interesting. But I mean, they're ready to do it. Was there anything else you wanted to plug here that we might have not hit on?
No, just go and follow Howls and Growls, subscribe on the channel, watch the videos if you are interested in anything we've kind of been speaking about today, or just interested in the Timberwolves on a game-to-game basis. Obviously, if you're a fan of another team, it's not something that you're going to follow all the time, but if you want to stop by and just see what's happening in the world, I break down my favorite parts from every game. This season, we're going to do a lot more, in terms of other things that I've been planning. So yeah, Howls and Growls is the place to find me, and obviously Jake Paynting on Twitter you can find as well. But yeah, I'd prefer you to watch my videos than follow me on Twitter. I'm not a great follower.
There it is. Check out Howls and Growls YouTube channel with Jake. Thanks a lot, man. It's been super interesting hearing your perspective, your process, watching film, creating these videos, and just breaking down Minnesota. It was a super interesting analysis today. So thanks a lot for hopping on the pod.
Thanks for having me, man.
Have a good one. Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.